Okay, so we're over a year from the initial release of Spider-Man No Way Home, and since the film came out and the hype has subsided a tad, I think it's a good idea to reflect on the film and analyze. Was No Way Home overhyped, or is it slightly underrated? Let's take a look. Before we continue, I'd like to give a quick shout out to my members page. If you enjoy my video essays, analytical content, or straight up rants about stuff I'm passionate about, then consider joining. For as little as 99 pence a month, you can get perks such as exclusive badges and emojis, shout outs at the end of every video, and even influence on upcoming videos and streams. And for the upper tier, which is still only £2.99 a month, you can get all of that and early access to all upcoming videos on the channel as well. But with that out of the way, back to the video. So, Spider-Man No Way Home. It was the final piece in the Home trilogy and arguably one of the most hyped comic book films, if not films, of all time. So first, let's take a look at No Way Home as a film. Does it stand up? What's there to like? Has it got a well-rounded structure? Has it got well-written characters? Does it have good dialogue? We have to separate No Way Home from the hype that it was attached to, which almost is all of its degree, the nostalgia factor of Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man showing up in this film. Some could make a very good case and point that all the villains from past Spider-Man movies showing up as well were also a nostalgia factor for this film. But since the film doesn't really work without these villains being at the forefront of the movie, especially Norman Osborn, then we won't consider them a nostalgia point. However, for the first 5 to 10 minutes or so, we're going to take Andrew and Tobey's Spider-Man out of the equation. We're going to analyze the film from a narrative and dramatic standpoint without taking them characters into consideration, to really see if our core cast of characters really does hold up to the expectations that this film had on its shoulders. So let's start with Tom Holland's Spider-Man, shall we? I think it's universally agreed that Tom Holland's Peter Parker in this film not only has the best written moments and story out of all of the MCU Spider-Man appearances, but one of the best written Spider-Man stories in all of the films that have featured the character thus far. The fall of learning responsibility, the death of Aunt May, and the consequence that is brought on by being Spider-Man is all leaned on in this film. I think at first, the film continues its happy-go-lucky tone from Far From Home, where the characters act more like they're from a Disney Channel movie rather than a Marvel epic. But I think this was intentional. The tonal shift took us by surprise, and the movie from the start to the end is like watching night and day. It is truly incredible. And I think it's wonderful how Peter's character changes and ebbs and flows throughout the film so easily. He hits all the character beats and all the downfalls, all the progression and regression necessary to make a compelling character. And I think moreover what this film achieves really well is encapsulating the conflict between Peter's wants and his needs. Peter's inner need doesn't change throughout the film, but his want does. Peter's want at the start of the film is that he wants to send all of the villains back home after the spell that Doctor Strange did almost collapsed the multiverse. However, May reminds him that it doesn't matter where they came from or who they are. She reminds him that these people that landed in the MCU are human beings, and Spider-Man needs to be there for people. Spider-Man is there to help people. So instead of just sending them back, Peter decides to help them, which is Peter's inner need. Peter's inner need is to learn the greater values of responsibility, and for a portion of the screen time in Act 2, Peter actually achieves learning his inner responsibility and achieves his inner need. But when the Green Goblin manages to kill Aunt May, Peter regresses. His character regresses and his new want is now to kill Norman Osborn. Even after Andrew and Tobey are introduced and Tobey's Spider-Man says to Tom that they need to cure them all, insinuating that they need to cure Norman Osborn despite him killing Aunt May, trying to place Tom Holland's Spider-Man back on track morally, Tom's Peter just wants and desires to kill Norman Osborn as expressed during their final battle. It isn't until Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man stops Tom's Spider-Man from killing Norman that he realizes what May told him, that killing isn't the answer, curing them is the answer. It's that inner responsibility. Goblin may be a psychotic murderer, but Norman Osborn is still a human being. Needless to say, I don't really need to go on about Tom Holland's Peter Parker more, because this film does a great job at layering his character and his emotional depth. But let's take a step back, shall we, to the grander picture. Something that the MCU Spider-Man trilogy, and because it's also a part of it, No Way Home, gets criticised for so often, is that its supporting cast and characters rarely have any depth and emotional weight to them, especially when comparing to to the layering and depth that the TASM movies or the Raimi films have given to their side characters. Although this may be true for its predecessor, Spider-Man Far From Home, which, by the way, you can go watch my video on that in the top right hand corner after you've watched this video, No Way Home gives layers to its characters, and I think it's unfairly criticized for having weak side characters when this film does an actual good job at giving its side characters emotional weight and emotional depth. Characters that have been subject to some neglect over the MCU's run with Spider-Man have been Michelle Jones, Ned Leeds, and Aunt May. And specifically, these three characters are always targeted as the main three culprits of barely having any development or depth in their character. These three fundamental characters that I thought deserved better during Homecoming and Far From Home actually get emotional and quite good depth in Spider-Man No Way Home. In this film, all three are given something to care about, something to do. MJ especially, I think, is the character that improves drastically from her Far From Home counterpart. In Spider-Man Far From Home, she's more of an objective for both Brad and Peter and is written rather cryptically and one-dimensionally. In Spider-Man No Way Home, however, they advance her witty pessimism, which has been woven into her personality, and make it a character flaw. They manage to give this depth to her character with a few throwaway lines. MJ going from not being able to believe that she will get into college to being optimistic that they will actually come out on top in the final battle is a severe improvement on what she was previously in the other films. While Peter was at his darkest moment and wanted to tap into that pessimism that MJ is so fond of, she switches up and reassures Peter that hope can be restored, realizing that you can never lose all hope. You have to keep going, which is a nice little touch on her character that I really like. And I feel like without this addition to the film, MJ as a character and the whole film probably would be a lot weaker. Ned Leeds is also another character that I actually think is done justice in this film too, although it's more of an external extension of his character. Giving Ned some kind of magical background in his family adds something interesting to the character's personal and family background. It adds more depth into the character that you might not have originally realized. Before No Way Home, how many times did you think about Ned's family, his background, where he came from, what type of person he is? How many of these questions were you asking by the time of the credits of Spider-Man Homecoming? Probably none. But after revealing that he's a worthy wielder of magic in No Way Home, I bet you questioned, hey, where did Ned come from? What is his family like? Who are his family? Why can he perform magic? Yes, questions that still need to be answered as to make Ned a substantial enough character to have enough emotional depth, but there is something there. There is something, at least something that wasn't present in Homecoming or Far From Home. And finally, Aunt May. Now, May was great in Homecoming, I just want to point this out. However, in Spider-Man Far From Home, she just became another one-dimensional character. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be this mean on Far From Home, you know, slating it and everything, but genuinely, if you want to watch my video on that, then make sure to do so. I think it covers some pretty crucial points. Anyway, in Spider-Man Homecoming, Aunt May was a character that had something to lose, something to fear to lose, which was Peter. Peter, her nephew, her surrogate son, was a crime fighter every single night, and she had no idea. And the thought of her finding out killed Peter at night. However, this really interesting dynamic, which admittedly had been explored before in other Spider-Man movies, was then destroyed in Spider-Man Far From Home. However, her character was solely redeemed in No Way Home. She served a purpose in being that mentor figure to Peter Parker once again. Her character in No Way Home was what she should have been to Peter in Far From Home. An understanding, caring mother who doesn't want her child to get hurt but also understands him, empathizes with him, and has to guide him on the right path of becoming the hero he always was meant to be, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Which obviously makes her death so much more impactful, makes her death so much more meaningful, not just for Peter, but for the story and for the audience as well. So yeah, the characters are pretty well written. Defoe's Goblin and Melina's Ock are outstanding in this film as well. Both have depth, both have character. The rest of the villains are just fine, but we'll talk more about them later. But yeah, apart from some shaky dialogue, most of the villains are written pretty well. Now let's move on to the things in this film which maybe aren't so good. There are quite a few plot holes in this film. In fact, there are so many that sometimes it does take you out of the film completely. We all know which ones these are. They've been pointed out a million times. One of the prime examples is the fact that characters that entered the MCU came on the basis that they knew Peter was Spider-Man from another universe. However, Electro, aka Max Dillon, never even knew that Peter was Spider-Man in the TASM universe. So, what the hell? But overall, despite how many of these plot holes there are, the character writing and emotional beats of the story I think far outweigh the plot holes and nitpicks that you can take from this film. I do agree that the film has to make sense within its own rules. I mean, just look how I've slated the MCU for the past 6 months, but Spider-Man No Way Home takes such good care of its characters and its story that the plot holes can be really overlooked in a way. But it's not just like they're random plot holes here and there that aren't there for a reason. I think they're really there so we can more understand and connect with the emotional drama. Because even though the plot holes are there, they are there in service of emotional drama, emotional beats. Other stuff I didn't really like was the Lizard. It kind of seemed like they didn't know what to do with this character in this film. He didn't really serve any other purpose other than to make up numbers. The same kind of goes for Sandman, but to be honest, I can be a little bit more lenient with him because they kind of played off the idea that he didn't really trust Peter in this universe because, you know, he wasn't his Peter, the Tobey Maguire version. So I guess that's something. But overall, they didn't really do that much with those characters. They didn't really do them that much justice. Electro was just fine. He doesn't really fall into the poor category, but he isn't great either. I also don't really like Doctor Strange in this movie as well. His character is just another plot device to move the story forward, but Doctor Strange has been given that treatment for most of his time in the MCU anyway, so I can't really complain here. And he also is absent for most of the movie when all the Peter stuff is happening, so he doesn't really drag this movie down either. Most of the dramatic story beats bounce between Tom Holland's Spider-Man, Aunt May, and Dafoe's Goblin, so Doctor Strange doesn't really make a bad mark on this movie. Now, I know I'd say that I'd avoid them at the start of this video, but we finally got to the section about Tobey and Andrew's Peter. Are they just blind fan service, or were they actually well-written characters like our main players throughout the movie? Well, they are. You see, as much hype as this film generated online, and despite how much hype it would have generated even if the film turned out disappointing, Andrew and Tobey's versions of Spider-Man were really well written, like really well. Not only were they written in character, their characters had mini arcs in this film as well. Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man got the redemption for the death of Gwen Stacy, and Tobey Maguire's Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man got the redemption for the death of his world's Norman Osborn. It was cute, it was slick, but overall I thought it was nice. It wasn't just fan service. They didn't just throw these characters in this movie for the heck of it. They didn't just throw them in there for the dollar bill. They actually meant something. I think when the movie first came out, it would have been so easy to ignore the fact that this movie may not have treated Andrew and Tobey's characters right, because we would have been blinded by the fact of them being back in the first place. But looking back at the movie 1 year on, since it came out, it really does hold up. Those characters did really mean something to the narrative, and they did add to Tom Holland's character. They aided his character in the dramatic story. Their characters were really well written, and take away the nostalgia elements, they are good characters, it's simple as that. Not only are they good characters, but the whole cast plays a selection of decently to greatly written characters in this film. The way that they are woven together in this dramatic narrative is simply inspiring. So after analysing what worked in Spider-Man No Way Home, from the main cast, to Spider-Man himself, to Tobey and Andrew, and also potentially looking at what didn't work in the film as well, I think overall, on the most part, No Way Home holds up. I don't think it's overrated, and to be honest, I don't think it really is underrated either. I think it's perfectly rated. I think the fans' hype around this film is definitely justified. And I think the people hating on this film for no reason whatsoever other than to call out the plot holes really ignore the fact that this movie really is dramatically sound. It's structurally sound. As a film goes, and as a grand narrative, as a screenplay, it's actually pretty good. The characters are really well written. So, is No Way Home overhyped? No, I don't think so. Thanks for watching this video. If you did enjoy, make sure to hit a like on it. Make sure to subscribe if you are new. And also, like I said at the start of the video, make sure to join the members page so you can get early access to all my content with a bunch of other perks as well, starting as cheap as 99p a month. Make sure to click the join button on the channel page for more information. And with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care and peace.